The stars looked peaceful from Admiral Grell's view on the observation deck of the Eternal Vigil. His 6 limbs were folded neatly behind him as he stared into the vastness of space. For 300 years, the galaxy had known peace under the Concordat, a union of 1,000 different alien worlds working together. "Admiral, we have the latest reports from the outer sectors," said Commander Vex, his second in command. The tall, slender alien's skin shimmered with a blue glow that pulsed gently with his words. "Anything unusual?" Grell asked, though he expected. "Nothing. The last real trouble, the hive mind rebellion, had ended decades ago. These days, his job as head of the Guardians, the Concordat's peacekeeping force, involved more paperwork than action." "Nothing of concern, sir. Routine trade disputes in the Orion Arm. A minor religious disagreement on Proxima 3. Nothing the local authorities can't handle." Grell nodded, his upper eyes blinking while his lower set remained fixed on a distant nebula. "Very good. It seems another quiet cycle awaits us." Far from the Eternal Vigil, on the edge of Concordat space, a small monitoring station drifted silently. Outpost 37 was not an exciting post. Most officers tried to avoid assignment here. Lieutenant Commander Hara did not mind the quiet. The delicate purple frills around her neck fluttered as she reviewed sensor data at her station. Her antennae suddenly twitched forward. "That's odd," she muttered, leaning closer to her screen. "Problem, Commander?" asked Officer Jex, a younger member of her same species. "Energy readings from Sector 87B. Unusual patterns, not matching anything in our database." Hara's fingers danced across the control panel, enhancing the readings. "It's coming from an unexplored system, primitive according to our records, no spacefaring capability." "Should we notify Central Command?" Jex asked. Hara considered this. Protocol required investigation of anomalies, but bothering Command with what was likely just a strange but natural phenomenon seemed unnecessary. "No, we'll send Scout Ship 14 to check it out first. If it's anything serious, then we'll contact Command." On Earth, in a sprawling complex of buildings surrounded by desert, Kevin Powell rubbed his tired eyes. The clock on the wall read 2:37 a.m., but he wasn't ready to stop working. Not when they were so close. "You should get some sleep," said Dr. Olivia Grant from the doorway of the lab. Her red hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, dark circles under her eyes showing she hadn't followed her own advice. Kevin shook his head. "Can't. We're running the final simulations on the drive core tonight. If the numbers look good, we might get approval to build the full prototype next month." Project Awakening was the most secret and ambitious program in NASA's history. While the public knew about plans for a Mars colony and mining operations on the asteroid belt, no one outside a select group knew about the attempt to create humanity's first faster-than-light propulsion system. "The military is getting impatient," Olivia said, walking over to check the simulation data on Kevin's screen. "Admiral Ward called again today. They can keep waiting. We're not going to rush something this important." Kevin pointed to a series of equations. "Look at these energy readings. They're not stabilizing the way they should." Olivia leaned closer, frowning. "That's strange. According to the theory, they should flatten out after the initial spike." "Exactly. It's like the energy is going somewhere, but we can't figure out where. Could it be a problem with the containment field?" Kevin shook his head. "We've checked it 3 times. The math is solid." What neither scientist realized was that their calculations were correct, but incomplete. The universe held secrets that human mathematics had not yet discovered. Project Awakening wasn't just moving energy through space, it was creating ripples in reality itself. Olivia suddenly shivered. "Do you ever get the feeling that we're messing with things we don't understand?" Kevin looked up, surprised. Olivia was usually the practical one, not given to vague worries. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "I've been having dreams, ever since we activated the small-scale test last month. Dreams about spaces between stars, vast and dark, and something moving in that darkness." Kevin smiled gently. "That's just stress. We're all feeling it." "Maybe." She didn't sound convinced. "Anyway, the brain scans from the lab rats came back. And? They're showing unusual patterns. increased activity in areas associated with fear responses, even though they haven't been exposed to any fear stimuli. Kevin frowned. Equipment malfunction? We checked. Everything's working properly. Before Kevin could respond, his computer beeped. The simulation had finished running. Both scientists leaned forward to see the results. This can't be right, Kevin whispered. The energy readings hadn't stabilized or dissipated as expected. Instead, they had formed a pattern, complex, almost like a language. And more disturbing, the pattern was growing. Millions of miles away, from Earth, Scout Ship 14 dropped out of hyperspace near the source of the unusual energy readings. Captain Ben Harris felt a slight jolt as the ship's systems adjusted to normal space. All systems normal, Captain, reported his pilot, a reptilian, draconid named Sriel. We've arrived at the coordinates, Ben nodded. What do we have, Science Officer Lin? The crystalline alien moved gracefully to her station. Her body sparkled under the ship's lights as she analyzed the sensor data. Fascinating. It's a small solar system. 8 planets orbiting a yellow star. The third planet appears to be the source of the energy disturbance. Life signs? Ben asked. Yes. The planet is teeming with biological life and artificial structures consistent with a pre-spacefaring civilization. Ben frowned. That doesn't make sense. How could a primitive species create energy patterns that our sensors can detect from light years away? Unknown, Captain, Lin replied. But the pattern is growing stronger and there's something else. What is it? The energy signature doesn't match anything in our database, but it's creating ripples in subspace, almost like echoes. Security. Chief Dorn, a heavily built warrior from a high-gravity world, growled from his station. I don't like this, Captain. Recommend we keep our distance and observe only. Agreed, Ben said. Maintain position at the edge of the system. Full passive scans only. No active signals that might alert them to our presence. As the crew settled in to observe the mysterious planet, none of them noticed the subtle distortion in space behind their vessel. Something had followed them, something that existed partly in normal space and partly outside it, something ancient that had been sleeping for eons until a tiny blue planet had unknowingly called out to it. On Earth, in her small apartment, Olivia, Grant woke suddenly from another nightmare, her heart pounding. In her dream, she had seen vast, shadowy shapes moving toward Earth, and somehow she knew humanity had been noticed. Their experiments had sent out a beacon into the darkness, between stars, and something was coming to answer. Captain Ben Harris stood on the bridge of Scout Ship 14, watching the small blue-green planet on the main screen. His crew of 12 specialists from various concordate species worked quietly at their stations, all focused on the unusual energy, readings coming from Earth. Any changes, Science Officer Lin? Ben asked. The crystalline alien's surface shimmered as she analyzed the data. The energy signature is growing stronger, Captain. It pulses at regular intervals now, almost like a beacon. Could it be intentional? Are they trying to contact someone? Ben wondered. Unlikely, said Lin. According to our records, this species has only achieved basic spaceflight within their own system. They shouldn't have knowledge of subspace, communications, or be aware of other intelligent life. Security Chief Dorn growled from his station. Intentional or not, they're causing ripples that shouldn't be possible with their level of technology. A sudden alarm blared through the ship. Captain, called the pilot's shrill. Something is approaching from the third planet. On the screen, a small object appeared, moving away from Earth at incredible speed, far faster than should have been possible for such a primitive world. Analysis? Ben demanded. It appears to be an unmanned probe, Lin replied. Small, containing basic sensors, and a simple propulsion system. But Captain, the method of propulsion is impossible. It's creating a field that's bending space itself. Are they aware of us? Dorn asked, his hand moving to his weapon. I don't believe so, said Lin. The probe isn't headed toward us. It seems to be on a pre-programmed path out of their solar system. Ben made a decision. Intercept the probe. Let's see what we're dealing with. On Earth, Kevin Powell watched the launch of humanity's first interstellar probe with a mixture of pride and concern. The small audience in NASA's control room cheered as the Pathfinder cleared Earth's orbit and activated its experimental drive. "It works," shouted Dr. Richard Bell, the project director. "Powell, you magnificent bastard, you actually did it." Kevin forced a smile but couldn't shake his feeling of unease. The energy patterns from their last simulation still troubled him, and Olivia's absence troubled him more. She had called in sick that morning, which wasn't like her at all. "The probe is performing perfectly," announced one of the technicians. "Drive stability at 98%. We're getting acceleration beyond our highest projections." Kevin should have felt triumphant. After years of work, Project Awakening was a success. Humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel. Instead, he felt a creeping dread, like they had opened a door that should have remained closed. When the celebration finally died down, Kevin slipped away and drove to Olivia's apartment. She didn't answer his knocks, so he used the spare key she had given him for emergencies. "Olivia?" he called as he entered. He found her in the living room, surrounded by dozens of drawings spread across the floor. In each one, she had drawn the same thing: a vast, shadowy shape with too many angles, reaching toward a small blue dot. Olivia looked up at him with bloodshot eyes. "They're coming, Kevin. They heard us. The drive. It doesn't just bend space, it tears it. And there are things living in the tears." In deep space, Scout Ship 14 captured the Earth probe in a tractor beam. The small device was remarkably simple in design but contained technology that should have been beyond human capabilities. "I've accessed their computer system," Lynn announced. "Primitive but functional. It contains what appears to be a greeting message." "Let's hear it," Ben ordered. A simple audio message played through the ship's speakers. "Greetings from Earth. We come in peace and friendship. This message travels beyond our solar system as a beacon of humanity's desire to join the galactic community." "They have no idea what they've done," Dorn muttered. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "I'm receiving an urgent message from Concordat Command. Admiral Grell wishes to speak with you immediately." Ben moved to his private console and accepted the transmission. Admiral Grell's image appeared, all 6 of his eyes showing clear concern. "Captain Harris," the Admiral began without greeting, "you must terminate your mission immediately and return to Concordat space. 3 colony worlds along the outer rim have gone silent." Ben felt a chill. What happened? Unknown. Investigation. Teams found the planets intact but completely empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Everyone simply gone. The only evidence was an energy signature matching the one your ship was sent to investigate. "Return immediately and prepare for quarantine." "Procedures, sir," Ben said hesitantly. "We've intercepted a probe from the planet. They've achieved faster-than-light technology, but they don't seem to understand its implications. I believe they're unaware of the danger." Admiral Grell was silent for a moment. "Bring the probe with you. All data about this world is now classified at the highest level. The Stellar Council will decide what to do." After the transmission ended, Ben stared at the blue planet on his screen, a primitive world on the verge of joining the galactic community, completely unaware that they had accidentally signaled to something ancient and hungry. "Captain," Lynn called, her voice unusually urgent. "The sensors are detecting a spatial distortion behind us. Something is forming." On the view screen, space itself seemed to fold, creating a tear in reality. Within that tear, darkness moved. "Evasive maneuvers," Ben shouted. "Get us out of here!" The ship lurched as Srill tried to turn them away from the growing rift, but something invisible held them in place. "The engines are at full power, but we're not moving," Srill reported, panic in his voice. Ben activated the ship-wide communication system. "All hands, emergency protocols, prepare for—" His words were cut short as the lights on the ship flickered and died. In the sudden darkness, the crew heard something impossible, whispers coming from everywhere and nowhere, speaking words that hurt the mind. One by one, the emergency lights came back on. Ben looked around and saw his crew frozen in place, their eyes wide with terror, staring at something only they could see. On Earth, Olivia Grant screamed and clutched her head. Kevin held her as she shook with fear. "They took the ship," she whispered. "They followed the signal and took the Watchers, and now they know where we are." Kevin didn't understand, but before he could question her, all electronic devices in the apartment activated simultaneously. Phones, television, even the microwave, all displaying the same message. "They are coming." At NASA headquarters, alarms began to sound. Sensors around the solar system detected multiple spatial anomalies forming near Neptune and moving inward toward Earth. Dr. Bell rushed into the control room. "What's happening? Are we getting feedback from the Pathfinder?" A young technician looked up, face pale with shock. "No, sir. We're detecting objects entering the solar system. Multiple objects moving at impossible speeds, and sir, they're not using any kind of propulsion we can understand." On the screen, dozens of dark shapes appeared, like tears in space itself, all converging on Earth. The horror from beyond had arrived. Dr. Olivia Grant sat in a small conference room at NASA headquarters, surrounded by military officers and government officials. Her hands shook as she tried to explain what she had seen in her dreams. Kevin Powell sat beside her, concerned but supportive. "They exist in the spaces between reality," Olivia said. "Our drive technology somehow tore the barrier between our universe and theirs. Now they're coming through." General Alan Wright, a stern-faced man with gray hair, leaned forward. "Dr. Grant, with all due respect, we need facts, not dreams. What we know is that unknown objects are approaching Earth and we need to prepare." "You don't understand," Olivia insisted. "These aren't aliens like we imagined. They're something else entirely, something older than stars." Before the general could respond, a young lieutenant burst into the room. "Sir, we've lost contact with the International Moon Base, and the objects have passed Jupiter's orbit. They'll reach Earth in less than 24 hours. The room erupted into urgent discussions. Kevin took Olivia's hand under the table and squeezed it gently. "What do they want?" he whispered to her. Olivia's eyes were distant. "Everything. They consume. Not just bodies, but minds, souls, reality itself. They've been trapped outside our universe for billions of years, and now they're hungry." Far from Earth, Admiral Grell stood before the emergency session of the Stellar Council. Representatives from 100 worlds argued loudly about how to respond to the crisis. "We must destroy the human world immediately," declared the Rigelian ambassador, his tendrils waving in agitation, "before whatever they've awakened spreads further." 3 colony worlds are already lost," countered the Procyon representative. "It may be too late for containment." Admiral Grell raised all 6 of his limbs for silence. "The ancient texts speak of entities that existed before the universe took its current form. Beings that were trapped outside when reality stabilized. If these are indeed those entities, destroying Earth will not stop them now that they have found a way in." "What do you suggest, Admiral?" asked the council leader, an ancient being of pure energy contained in a special suit. "We must gather the fleet, all combat-capable vessels. We will make our stand at Earth." "You would risk everything to defend a primitive world?" asked the Rigelian in disbelief. "No," Grell replied. "I would risk everything to defend all worlds. If these entities cannot be stopped at Earth, nowhere will be safe." On Earth, chaos spread as the first signs of the coming horror appeared. Strange lights filled the night sky. Electronic devices played bizarre, hypnotic patterns. Animals fled in panic or fell into unnatural stillness. In his laboratory, Kevin worked frantically to understand what had gone wrong with Project Awakening. If their drive technology had opened the doorway, perhaps it could also close it. "The energy pattern is a perfect inverse of stable reality," he muttered, staring at computer models. "It doesn't just bend space, it turns it inside out." Olivia sat nearby, drawing complex symbols on paper. Her connection to the entities had grown stronger. Through her dreams, she saw them clearly now, vast beings of darkness and light, folded in impossible ways, hungry after eons of imprisonment. "Kevin," she said suddenly, "what if we reverse the polarity of the drive? Created an anti-pattern to cancel out the tear. Kevin looked up. That might work, but we'd need an enormous power source. And we'd have to place it right at the largest tear point. Where is that? Kevin pulled up satellite data on his screen. According to these readings, the North Atlantic, about 300 miles east of Newfoundland. Olivia stared at the map. That's where they'll come through first, their main doorway. The door to the lab burst open as General Wright entered with several soldiers. Dr. Powell, Dr. Grant, we're evacuating key personnel to the underground facilities. You two are on the priority list. General, Kevin said urgently. We might have a way to close the tear, but we need resources. In space, Admiral Grell's fleet exited hyperspace near Earth's moon. 80 warships from across the Concordat, representing the largest military force assembled in centuries, formed a defensive pattern around the blue planet. Status report, Grell commanded from the bridge of the Eternal Vigil. The spatial tiers are forming a pattern around the planet, reported Commander Vex. Largest concentration in the planet's northern ocean. Energy readings are off the scale. Are we detecting any resistance from the humans? Grell asked. Minimal. They've launched some primitive missiles, but they have no effect on the tiers. Their global communications are in disarray. Grell studied the tactical display. Position our ships to concentrate fire on the largest tear when it fully forms. All weapons at maximum power. On a naval vessel in the Atlantic, Kevin and Olivia worked with military engineers to modify a nuclear submarine's reactor. They had less than 2 hours before the main tear would fully open. The device needs to be placed directly at the coordinates, Kevin explained to Captain George Miller, the submarine's commander. When activated, it should create a counter-resonance that will force the tear closed. And if it doesn't work? Captain Miller asked. Kevin and Olivia exchanged glances. Then nothing will stop them from coming through, Kevin said quietly. On the radar screens, officers watched with growing dread as a strange distortion formed on the ocean's surface. A perfect circle of water that didn't move with the surrounding. Waves as if that patch of reality was following different rules. That's it, Olivia whispered. Their doorway. Captain Miller gave the order to dive. The submarine moved toward the distortion, maintaining communication with the surface for as long as possible. As they approached the coordinates, the submarine systems began to malfunction. Lights flickered. Crew members reported hearing whispers. The hull creaked under impossible pressures. We're getting strange readings from outside, reported the sonar operator. The water, it doesn't sound like water anymore. Through the periscope, Captain Miller saw something that defied explanation. The ocean ahead wasn't moving like water should. It rippled in geometric patterns, reflecting lights that had no source. We've reached the deployment zone, the navigator announced, his voice shaking. Kevin made final adjustments to their device, a modified nuclear core surrounded by specialized field generators. Once we eject this, we have 3 minutes to clear the area before it activates. Suddenly the submarine shuddered violently. Metal screamed as invisible forces pulled at the hull. Emergency alarms blared throughout the vessel. What's happening? Captain Miller demanded. They know we're here, Olivia said, her face pale. They can sense our minds. Through the submarine's external cameras, they saw the water around them begin to change. It became darker, thicker, filled with moving shadows that shouldn't exist in the deep ocean. Deploy the device now, Kevin shouted. Captain Miller gave the order. With a mechanical hiss, the torpedo tubes opened, launching the device into the distortion. Full power, Miller commanded. Get us out of here. The submarine's engines roared as they attempted to flee, but the vessel barely moved. Outside, reality itself was breaking down, making normal movement impossible. In orbit, Admiral Grell watched as his sensors detected the humans' desperate attempt. They're trying to close the tear, he said with surprise. These primitives understood. More than we thought. Sir, said Commander Vex. Should we assist them? Grell considered for only a moment. All ships, target your weapons on these coordinates. Fire on my command. The Concordat fleet's weapons charged, ready to add their power to humanity's last stand. Below, in the failing submarine, Kevin held Olivia as the hull began to crack. Water sprayed into the command center as the counter-resonance device activated, sending pulses of structured energy into the tear. "Will it work?" Captain Miller asked, holding onto a console as the submarine tilted at an impossible angle. Olivia closed her eyes, sensing the entities just beyond the tear. They were massive, ancient, and furious at the resistance. "They're pushing back," she whispered. "The device isn't strong enough on its own." Above, Admiral Grell gave his command. Fire. Energy beams from 80 warships converged on the Atlantic, tear, joining with the human device's counter-resonance. The ocean boiled and steamed as two forces battled for reality itself. In the submarine, Olivia suddenly opened her eyes. "They're afraid," she said in wonder. For the first time in their existence, they feel fear. The ocean above the submarine boiled with energy as the combined power of human technology and the Concordate fleet battled against the dimensional tear. The submarine's hull groaned under impossible pressures as reality itself warped around them. "Hull breach in sections 3 and 4, shouted an officer as water sprayed into the command center. Captain Miller made the hard choice. "All hands, abandon ship, get to the escape pods." Kevin grabbed Olivia's arm. "We need to go now." She shook her head, eyes distant. "Not yet. Something's happening." Outside the submarine, the tear in reality flickered like a dying light. The counter-resonance device, combined with the alien weapons, was having an effect. But at the edges of the tear, dark tendrils pushed through, the entities fighting to maintain their doorway into our universe. "It's not enough," Olivia whispered. "They're too strong." On the bridge of the Eternal Vigil, Admiral Grell watched the battle with growing concern. "The tear is still expanding despite our efforts." "Sir," reported Commander Vex, "we're detecting new tiers forming around the planet, smaller but growing." Grell's upper eyes narrowed. "They're trying to find another way in, split the fleet, keep half focused on the main tear, send the rest to contain the new openings." The Concordate ships moved with precision, their weapons targeting the rifts that were appearing across Earth's surface. In cities around the world, people watched in fear and wonder as energy beams from alien ships struck at invisible points in the sky. In Denver, Colorado, Army Captain Frank Lawrence led his unit through streets filled with panicked civilians. Strange shadows moved along buildings, causing anyone who looked directly at them to freeze in place, eyes wide with terror. "Don't look at them," Frank shouted to his soldiers. "Keep your eyes down and keep moving." They had been ordered to escort civilians to the underground bunker beneath the city center, but with each passing minute the shadows grew more solid, more real. As they passed a local radio station, Frank noticed something odd. The shadows seemed to avoid the building. He stopped, watching carefully. "Sir?" asked Sergeant Paul Wilson. "We need to keep moving." "The shadows won't go near that building," Frank said. "Why?" Inside the radio station, the equipment was still running, broadcasting an emergency alert signal, a steady tone at 440 hertz. Frank had a sudden realization. "Get everyone inside the station, now!" Once inside, Frank found the control board and adjusted the frequency, trying different settings. At 520 hertz, the shadows that had begun to seep under the doors suddenly pulled back. "They don't like certain sounds," Frank said with growing excitement. "Sergeant, get me all the speakers and amplifiers you can find. We're going to create a safe zone." In Seattle, police officer Diane Martinez directed a stream of refugees across the Lake Washington floating bridge. Strange fog had begun to roll through the city streets, and anyone caught in it vanished without a trace. "Keep moving," she shouted, helping an elderly man who had stumbled. "We need to get everyone across the water." As the fog approached the bridge, Diane braced herself for the worst. But to her surprise, the fog stopped at the water's edge, swirling and churning, but unable to cross. "The water," she murmured. "They can't cross water." She grabbed her radio. "All units, direct evacuations across water routes. Use the ferries, the bridges, anything. The entities can't cross water." Across the city, police boats began gathering civilians from the shoreline, creating a floating refugee fleet on the lake. Back in the Atlantic, the damaged submarine continued to sink as most of the crew escaped in pods. Kevin tried again to pull Olivia toward an escape pod, but she remained focused on the tier. "Olivia, we have to go," Kevin pleaded. "I can feel them," she said. "They're so old, Kevin, so hungry, but they're also confused." Confused about what? Us. Humans. They don't understand why we're fighting back. The other species they encountered just gave up, overwhelmed by the horror. But humans were stubborn. The submarine lurched violently, throwing them against a wall. Water now covered the floor of the command center, rising quickly. "We need to leave now," Captain Miller insisted. "Last pod is waiting." As they moved toward the escape pod, Olivia suddenly stopped. "Wait, I understand. Now, the device isn't strong enough because it's missing something." "What?" Kevin asked. "Intent. Will. These entities feed on fear and surrender, but they're vulnerable to determination. Human will is like poison to them." Captain Miller looked skeptical. "How does that help us?" Olivia turned to Kevin. "The counter-resonance device needs a human component, someone to guide it, to focus the energy with pure human determination." Kevin's face paled as he understood. "You mean someone has to stay behind?" "I'll do it," Olivia said firmly. "I'm already connected to them through my dreams. I can channel the counter-resonance directly into their consciousness." "No." Kevin grabbed her shoulders. "There has to be another way." The water had reached their waists now. Captain Miller checked his watch. "We have less than 2 minutes before this whole vessel is crushed by pressure." "Kevin," Olivia said gently, "this is the only way. Get to the surface. Tell them what we've learned about sound and water. Help them fight." Before Kevin could argue further, the submarine shook with another violent impact. A section of ceiling collapsed, separating Kevin and Captain Miller from Olivia. "Go," she shouted through the gap. "I'll finish this." Captain Miller pulled the reluctant Kevin toward the last escape pod. As the pod doors closed and they launched toward the surface, Kevin watched through the small window as the submarine continued its descent toward the heart of the tear. Inside the sinking vessel, Olivia made her way back to the counter-resonance device. Only its backup systems were still functioning, but it was enough. She placed her hands on the control panel and closed her eyes. In her mind, she could see the entities clearly now. Vast, ancient beings of shadow and light, folded in impossible geometries. They pushed against the tear, desperate to enter a universe they had been denied for eons. Olivia focused all her will into the device, not just operating it, but becoming part of it. She thought of Earth, of humanity, of Kevin. She poured her determination into the counter-resonance field. "You can't have my world," she whispered. The entities recoiled as the counter-resonance, now infused with human will, struck them like a physical blow. The tear began to close, its edges knitting back together as reality reasserted itself. In orbit, Admiral Grell watched in amazement as the main tear suddenly began to collapse. "What happened?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir," replied Commander Vex. "But the human device is showing a completely new energy pattern. It's somehow directly opposing the entity's own energy signature." "The other tiers?" Grell asked. "Also shrinking, sir. Whatever the humans did at the main tear is affecting all of them." As the escape pod reached the surface, Kevin watched the water churn and then suddenly grow calm. The unnatural patterns disappeared, replaced by normal ocean waves. Above, the Concordate ships continued to circle, but their weapons were no longer firing. Kevin knew what had happened. Olivia had sacrificed herself to close the tear. But in doing so, she had shown the entities something they had never encountered before. A mind that refused to break before horror, a will that would not surrender even in the face of cosmic terror. And somehow, that human quality had been their weakness. Around the world, the shadows and strange phenomena began to recede. In Denver, Captain Frank Lawrence's sound barrier had protected hundreds of civilians. In Seattle, Officer Diane Martinez had saved thousands by using the lake as a natural barrier. Humanity had survived the first attack, but the war had only just begun. 3 months after the first attack, Earth was a changed world. The skies now held the constant presence of concordate ships. In major cities, alien technology helped rebuild damaged areas. Humans and aliens worked side by side, preparing for the possibility that the entities might find another way through. Kevin Powell stood at the window of the new International Defense Headquarters in Geneva, watching a concordate shuttle land in the courtyard. The loss of Olivia still ached, but he had channeled his grief into work. Her sacrifice had saved billions of lives and taught them how to fight the entities. "Dr. Powell," said a young assistant, "Admiral Grell has arrived for the meeting." Kevin nodded and made his way to the conference room. Inside, military leaders from around the world sat alongside representatives from the Concordat. At the head of the table, Admiral Grell's six-limbed form commanded respect from all present. "Dr. Powell," Grell acknowledged as Kevin took his seat, "your teams have made remarkable progress." "Thank you, Admiral. The sound barrier technology has been deployed in all major population centers, and we've established water-based safe zones on every continent." General Wright, now head of Earth's Unified Defense Forces, spoke next. "Our global early warning system is operational. If any new tiers begin to form, we'll know immediately." Admiral Grell gestured with his upper limbs. "Excellent. But we must prepare for the long term. The entities will not give up easily. They have waited billions of years for access to our universe. They can wait longer." "What's the status of the rest of the galaxy?" asked the Chinese representative. "3 more colony worlds have reported minor incursions," Grell replied. "But using the methods we learned from Earth, they were able to repel the entities quickly. The sound barriers and water defenses work consistently." Kevin leaned forward. "And the research into Olivia's connection with the entities? Have your scientists made any progress understanding how she was able to sense them?" Commander Vex, who had been appointed as a liaison to Earth's scientists, answered, "We believe certain human brains can perceive frequencies beyond normal sensory ranges. Dr. Grant was not unique. We've identified several hundred humans with similar potential abilities. We're calling them resonants," Kevin added. "People who can sense the entities and potentially help strengthen our defenses against them." The meeting continued as they discussed new defensive technologies and strategies. The cooperation between humans and the Concordat had progressed at an unprecedented pace. Humans offered creativity and determination, while the aliens provided advanced technology and knowledge of the universe. After the meeting, Admiral Grell asked Kevin to join him for a private conversation. They walked together in the headquarters. Garden, an odd pair, the six-limbed alien admiral and the human scientist. "There is a matter I wish to discuss with you," Grell said. "The Stellar Council is meeting next week to vote on offering Earth formal membership in the Concordat." Kevin stopped walking in surprise. "That's unexpected. I thought the process would take years." "Normally, yes. But these are not normal times." Grell's upper eyes blinked slowly. "Many council members were initially in favor of destroying Earth to contain the entity threat. Now they wish to fast-track your world's integration into our alliance." "What changed their minds?" Kevin asked. "You did. Humans did." Grell gestured to a nearby Earth flower with one limb. "In all my centuries, I have never seen a species respond to cosmic horror the way humans have. Most sentient beings, when confronted with entities that defy comprehension, simply break. Their minds cannot process such horror, and they surrender to madness or despair." Kevin thought of Olivia, who had faced the entities directly and maintained her will to the end. "We're stubborn that way." "It is more than stubbornness," Grell said. "It is a unique form of mental resilience. Where other species see incomprehensible horror and surrender, humans see a problem to be solved. You create sound barriers. You use water as protection. You find the entity's weaknesses and exploit them without hesitation." Kevin hadn't thought of it that way. "We just do what we need to survive." "Precisely. And that quality may be what saves not just Earth but all worlds." Grell turned all six eyes to Kevin. I believe the entities will return, Dr. Powell, and when they do, the galaxy will need humanity's unique perspective. In Denver, Captain Frank Lawrence, now Colonel Lawrence, supervised the installation of a new sound barrier system. The technology had evolved rapidly, now incorporating both human and alien components. The frequencies had been refined to target the entity's specific vulnerabilities. Test it again, Frank ordered. The system activated, sending invisible waves of sound through a 10-mile radius. To human and alien ears, it was barely noticeable, a faint hum at the edge of hearing. But for any entity that might try to break through, it would be agony. Frank checked the readings and nodded with satisfaction. Coverage is complete. Denver is secure. His second-in-command, a blue-skinned alien named Trell, added, "The underground shelters are also ready. If the barriers fail, the population can evacuate below." In Seattle, Officer Diane Martinez, now heading the Water Defense Division of the Pacific Northwest, inspected a fleet of boats modified with alien technology. Each vessel could now generate a field that amplified water's natural barrier effect against the entities. "The harbor defense is looking good," she told her team, "but I want daily drills. If those things come back, I want everyone on the water within 30 minutes. A Concordant engineer working nearby added, "We've also completed the underwater sensor network. If any tear begins to form within 100 miles of the coastline, we'll know immediately." Diane nodded. "Perfect. Let's hope we never need it." In his private lab at the Geneva headquarters, Kevin worked late into the night. On his desk sat a small device, a personal version of the counter-resonance technology that Olivia had used to close the main tear. He had been trying to refine it to understand exactly how Olivia's human will had affected the entities. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. It was from a research team in Australia that had been studying the ocean floor where the submarine had sunk. Kevin opened the message and froze. They had found something, a section of the submarine's hull perfectly preserved, and on its surface strange markings that hadn't been there before. Patterns that resembled brainwaves but more complex, more alien. The message included a note. "Dr. Powell, when we scanned these markings, they produced energy readings similar to human thought patterns, but magnified 1,000 times. We think this might be Dr. Grant." Kevin's hands shook as he studied the images. Could Olivia's consciousness somehow have been preserved in the interaction between the counter-resonance device and the entities? Was she still out there, in some form? As Earth prepared for whatever might come next, a new possibility emerged. That humanity's first contact with the entities had not just been about defense, but communication. Perhaps Olivia had not only closed the tear, but had begun a different kind of connection. In the vastness of space aboard the Eternal Vigil, Admiral Grell received reports from across the galaxy. More worlds were adopting Earth's defensive measures. Concordant scientists were studying human brain patterns, trying to understand what made them so uniquely resistant to cosmic horror. The horror from Earth, humanity's stubborn refusal to surrender, in the face of the incomprehensible, was spreading throughout the galaxy. And for the first time in billions of years, the ancient entities knew fear. The war was far from over. But humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through peaceful exploration as they had once imagined, but by becoming the front line, in a battle for reality itself. And somewhere, in the spaces between dimensions, Olivia Grant's consciousness reached out, learning the language of entities that had never known communication, only consumption. The next encounter would be different. Humanity was ready.